And we're live.
Here we are.
So, thanks everyone for being here. And I'm just going to start off straight away with introductions. So I will go across to my side there. So Angelia.
I'm Angelia from Read and Reread. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here.
Roz.
I guess I'm going down to Roz.
Yeah.
So, hi, Roz from Scallydandling about the books and kind of like co-host for the contemporary strand of Reading the Globe. And I'm going that way.
Yeah, I'm thinking, are we all in the same arrangement with each other? Yeah, I'm Tilly from Tilly Shelf. I don't post videos anymore, but I am very active on wonderful Discord discussions, such as the Reading the Globe. Reading the Globe.
Great to have you all here. So I was thinking, anyone who's in the chat as well, just throw in your comments, any thoughts on the book and everything. We're going to start off, in case you've joined and you've not read the book, we'll start off with a little bit of like non-spoiler, sort of look at the author, look at the themes, and then we'll really go into the detail of it as we usually do. So I'll probably start off with asking about who loved this or really enjoyed it. Okay, and and who found it fascinating?
Oh yeah, absolutely, deeply. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think possibly looking at people's expressions, I may have been the one that enjoyed it the most out of the four of us, because I like a book that I find fascinating is liable to be that's one of the components of enjoyment for me, put it that way. And I did find it fascinating, and I also found elements of the writing style really enjoyable, and the literary references, all of which we can come to. So I think, yes, I did really enjoy it, although I didn't think it was a perfect book.
It's interesting you say that, because I do think it was a really good book, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I enjoyed it. Or like, I did enjoy it, as it happens. I enjoyed the tone of the narrator. I found that when I started reading it, I was quite hooked quite quickly, which is always something that means enjoyment for me. And yeah, it was fascinating in terms of it prompted a lot of thinking. Yeah, like I would say it was definitely, to me, it was a very good book, but not a very fun book, maybe.
And Angelia?
Yeah, I liked it, but I didn't love it. And I did find, the discussion really, really enriched it a lot and made me like it more. I thought it was just really interesting things going on in there with the themes and the construction and the idea. I mean, it wasn't a book that really reminded me of another book, or I didn't know where it was going to go, but it was the choices about where we left off with those characters and the bodies in use that I don't know, it kind of rained on my parade of enjoying it a little bit, what happened near the end.
Okay, yeah. And I think if we're doing a sort of like ranking of who liked it most to who liked it least, I probably come in at least. It was okay. But otherwise I just was not a huge fan. But I will say thank you, Memo, for reminding us that we've actually got this scheduled on a really good day. This is International Women's Day. So thanks for that reminder. And Amelia.
It is tremendously appropriate for International Women's Day, in that it is a book that is absolutely about what it is to be a woman, or it's about kind of the binary definitions of gender, and are they real, and to what extent are they in all of us, and are we both masculine and feminine, and is the idea of feminine something that sort of is imposed on us by society and upbringing, that it's a very International Women's Day appropriate book to talk about.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In terms of looking at gender and morality and all of that as well. So Amelia said, I liked it, but my main issue has been the psychoanalysis aspect of it. Have my problems with Freud.
Don't we all?
And Katie says, hi, I read this in late October and I went back to look at my rating and I had written down 4 ? Looking forward to listening to your discussion. Okay, well, we'll look forward to your thoughts as well. Do chip in. But
I do like that 4 ? Like I'm not entirely sure. I can't fully commit.
Yeah, I was kind of like that. And then I ended up with 3.75. I gave it a demerit for not liking the ending.
That's fair, because an ending makes and breaks a book, really.
Yeah.
But I think if we hadn't been discussing it at the same time, I would have liked it quite a lot less than I did, I think.
Yes, I think so too. I think I definitely, and I can't separate those things. My experience of reading and however I read it with someone else or by myself is going to influence my take on the whole thing. So yeah, it probably would have been a little lower if I just sat and read it by myself.
So my next question is, because we ended up having an impromptu for part of the group, people suddenly went, oh, do you know what? I've always meant to read or reread Virginia Woolf's Orlando. So maybe I'll do that before I actually read Orlanda, because January was a classics read. So people decided to actually not go with the classic that was necessarily the one we'd picked for the Reading the Globe, but they picked Orlando. Have any of you, did you take part in that little side quest?
No.
I have a feeling.
Orlando, I know really well. So
comparison. I think it's why, I really ended up enjoying Orlando. It was a reread after like 30 years. And then I started this, and I think that is maybe why I'm more critical. Just a sudden thought.
I meant to join the Orlando reread, but I just didn't manage to sort of fit it in. So I wonder whether I would have thought differently if I had managed to do it.
I couldn't put it in, and I have Orlando, and I've had Orlando for years and years and haven't read it. And so I missed yet another time. But so now I don't know if I read it now, would it diminish Orlando in retrospect, retroactively?
I think I shouldn't have put them together as thinking that they would be tonally similar. And the start of Orlanda sort of gave me the impression that it would be tonally the same, because it started off quite humorous. I did immediately start to have my doubts with the train scene when, after we have this character. We've got Orlanda and Aline, and when that sort of like split is very definite in terms of, she'd be too stuck up to do what I'm about to do, and that's when I thought, this is a little unsettling, and far more unsettling than Virginia Woolf was with Orlando, and that's when I realized the tone was very different.
Yeah, well, and then Orlando has his little escapade on the train, and then when they're getting off the train, he sees that person again with their family, and you think, that's kind of
that's exactly when I started feeling settled. It's like
that little thing,
the slippery slope. So we've got a couple more comments. We've got Amelia said, I definitely still prefer Orlando, which I gave 5 stars when I first read it. And
to be fair, like if you're going to compare a book to a book by Virginia Woolf, you are setting the bar very, very high.
I was going to say the same.
It sort of felt inevitable.
I suppose Jacqueline Harpman set herself up for that by writing a book that was in direct response or reads like a response to Orlando, and obviously has a lot of references to Orlando within it, so she kind of asked to be compared.
Well, and there was other literary references all the way through. And then also I thought one thing that I thought was really part of the fun and playful aspect was the jabs at academia and the literature conversations. And then when they finally, Aileen just starts like speaking out and saying, well, that's just a bunch of crap. And it just skewered some of that pretentious literary conversations.
Yep. Yeah, and I quite liked when she starts speaking up. There's obviously, it's sort of like, again, everything escalates, doesn't it? But so Memo says, my issue with Orlanda was Aileen's rapid change toward the end. I wasn't totally convinced.
So
well, and I think we need to, we probably should save discussing the end of the book for a bit later in our conversation, so that people can kind of, we can give a spoiler warning, as it were. But I think, like, in a way, it was the point of the book that you know, like, she's freeing herself from her childhood or sort of the teenage imposition on her of this is what you've got to be like. So I was quite comfortable with her changing, because that was the point, maybe.
I also, without adding in any spoilers, I don't think I didn't, although things escalated and the timescale for the story is very, very short already. So I think, is it 2 weeks or something or that they're separate for? I didn't see it as a particularly rapid change towards the end, because you see from very early on these things where she's saying, oh, well, like, I never would have done that before. I never would have lied to my husband about going out and having ice cream with a man. Like, like, she starts changing as soon as Orlanda isn't within her. It's just that the pace of change increases as the situation intensifies.
So I did want to ask if anyone is very familiar with the author, because this is the first book that I've read by Jacqueline Harpman, and I've actually I only know that she's a Belgian was a Belgian Francophone writer and psychoanalyst. So I would welcome anyone giving us more information about the author.
I have read another of her books, which is I read last year, which was I Who Have Never Known Men. And I think there is a kind of, perhaps her background as a psychoanalyst kind of does play into that book as well. But it's more fantastic, I suppose. Well, saying it's more fantastic than someone jumping from into somebody else's body seems, but it's set in a sort of a dystopian possible future. After it's a sort of post-apocalyptic disaster book. Have either of you read it? Angelia, you've read it.
I've read it. And one thing that I thought was really interesting in the group conversation was people chiming in on they loved one but not so much the other, or vice versa. And I was on team absolutely love I Who Have Never Known Men. Just absolutely love that book. And this one, as I've said, I liked it, but I didn't totally love it. And it just, that conversation made me just want to go back and read that one again. Loving that book was what drew me to this book to begin with, because I saw it in the bookstore, and then we ended up having this opportunity to read it together. But yeah, and I guess thematically, I would say just that she's very much of a risk taker as far as a story writer. Just she's coming up with something unexpected. You don't know where it's going. I mean, just all of that I really appreciate. Even if something doesn't land quite right, I enjoy the risk taking and the freshness of the whole thing.
I think the two books are completely different, although they do both. I mean, she's certainly interested in the sort of male-female relations, and that was a theme in both, I guess. But in terms of style, they're just completely different, and I really enjoyed that. It wasn't a retread of something that I think I'd read before.
Yeah. Amelia says, I have read I Who Have Never Known Men too, which I would probably prefer over Orlanda, but I didn't love it as much as everyone else seemed to do.
I think
So
I'd quite like to read it now, having read Orlanda and heard the differences of opinion. I think I'd like to fill in that gap for myself.
Yeah, and I think that I would be interested as well, even though I didn't much enjoy Orlando. I'm curious about the other book, and it's also more readily available at my library than this one has been. So yeah, I'd give it a go.
Yeah. And thinking about, you said, what about her life? And I don't know a lot about it, but I do know she had quite a kind of tricky sort of childhood because of the war. The family were Jewish. She ended up, they moved to Morocco, I think.
Yep, I've just looked it up. You're absolutely right. They were in Casablanca in exile.
Casablanca. Yeah, I thought it was Casablanca. So quite I guess that element of disruption in your childhood is an interesting background for becoming both a writer and a psychoanalyst.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is she hadn't chosen initially, according to Wikipedia, to be a psychoanalyst in the first instance, but she had to give up training in medicine due to TB, contracting TB. Yeah.
Yeah. So, intriguing kind of personal story. Yeah. And I suppose knowing that sort of, there's a sort of a bravery about her writing, isn't there? A sort of like, as you were saying, Angelia, it's sort of like, oh, let's break the rules and I don't know, take a different take on things. They're very, not predictable, not realist, they don't fall into any sort of neat category either, so.
Right. And I know we're not talking about endings right now, but both of the books, neither of them answer every question or wrap everything up. You get to the end, you're like, wait a minute, wait, hold on, we're done? Wait. And I am a total fan of those kind of books that just kind of have some funky aspect to the ending, like off kilter, unresolved, open-ended things hanging out there. I love that in books.
Yep, and the translator is actually, she's got tons and tons of books in her repertoire. Roz Schwartz, award-winning literary translator. Yeah, so she's translated a lot of French and Belgian authors, and also French-speaking authors from across Africa. And she also trains upcoming translators. So she's got this huge repertoire. And I was curious because I can't read French, but I reckon that her translation must be extremely faithful. So if anyone has read the original and the English and wants to comment, that would be great. But yeah, Roz Schwartz.
And of course, one of the interesting things about reading this is it's a book from the 1990s. And she's had a resurgence of interest since she died in about 10 years ago or so. So she hadn't
2012.
So she's more popular in English now than she ever was at the time the book, because Roz Schwartz's translations are certainly of these two, I think were not that long after they were originally published, but they've sort of and apparently it was Book Talk, TikTok, that got I Who Have Never Known Men so popular, and then Orlando.
That's good.
I found it quite interesting to read something that deals with these themes of gender and I suppose specifically changing gender or accepting a part of yourself that wishes to be a different gender or is a different gender. I found it interesting to read a book about that theme that wasn't written in the 2020s, in this like recent period of, I suppose, heightened political and social attention on that has been in many ways quite divisive. So it was quite interesting to see it from like a, I guess to get that sort of 90s perspective, or yeah, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but to see something that I think it would be written differently today because of the current discourse around.
Right. And the character is in her mid-30s, and she's talking about how she started to be stifled when she was 12. So in, I guess, the 70s. So that's interesting too to think, because if you fast forward that, it's like, oh, then she would kind of line up with my age now if this character was here now. So then I started thinking, well, let me think about when I was that age in puberty, and did I get any of these kind of messages about appropriate behavior? Because she started getting it from everywhere around her, and then she internalized it and began to, she shuffled Orlanda's section of herself somewhere in the background. And so that was interesting. And then the whole idea that Orlanda is simultaneously 12 and like 35 running around in a 20-year-old's body. So that led to a bunch of weird
So
and
I guess he has that kind of the childlike, the 12-year-old part of him is the part that will be completely in the moment and completely in the present and not really care about any consequences. I was just looking through some of my notes and things because I'm trying to remind myself of bits, and there's one bit where he goes to stay with the man that he's seeing, and the guy's like, oh, you know, like, would you like anything? It's like, oh yeah, I'll eat like a horse. And the guy's like, well, people normally say, you know, I'll thank you, I won't be too much trouble. He's like, it's meant to be made welcome, and I don't see why I should pretend not to be pleased. That's a very 12-year-old thing to say, like, I'm happy about this, you know, why would I lie? So that kind of transparency that he has as a character, when Aline herself is becoming less and less transparent and more sort of duplicitous.
Okay, and talking about the stifled Orlanda within Aline, I'm going to unstifle us and just say that we're going to be moving soon into spoiler territory. Just a very quick update here from comments. There'll be a third book published by her in English in July called We Were Forbidden. So Amelia's shared that. And I've looked it up, and she had written 15 novels. So yeah, there's a full repertoire there that they can, you know, tap into in terms of translations. But from this point on, if you're trying to avoid any spoilers, just be aware that we are going to be talking about details of the actual book. So yeah, there'll be spoiler territory now.
And that brings me to wanting to talk about the narrator's voice, because that was one of the strengths of the book for me. And I really enjoyed, there's a kind of a wry humor, I guess, which slightly misled me about the book, because I thought it was going to carry on being a funny book. And that's why, you know, this comes into the spoiler territory of how it changes towards the end. But nevertheless, all the way through, I really enjoyed the narration. I loved it when the narrator said, oh, well, you know, so, you know, oh, he and this man go into the loo on the train, and, oh, we're not going in there, and I'm not going to talk about it. Yes, I love that. And thank God, because you know, one of my pet hates in contemporary books is laborious sex scenes.
She actually writes at one point, oh, I'm not going to go into that because frankly I find these things boring to write, and if I find it boring to write, it's not going to be interesting to read.
I clapped.
Yeah. I like the it's very much the narration is completely breaking the fourth wall all the time, which in the way that it was done was quite appealing. Like sometimes that works really badly, but in this case I liked it. And I think quite a few of us in the chat had these moments of like, who is this narrator? Like, is this Harpman herself, or is this a whole different character again that we should be trying to understand in a different way?
Yeah,
I really like
by the end you kind of realize that it is Harpman. But yeah.
See, I really like that too. And like Roz, it threw me off because it was so playful and funny, and then all of a sudden And things did not really get dark all of a sudden. If you look back on it, it's kind of it's coming along, but it becomes inescapable at some point. But it kind of goes along with there's a sense of like, I can't think of the right word for it, but when it gets to the part in the story when Aileen and Orlanda can't bear to be apart, and then the time that they can be apart keeps shrinking, and they're at first it just feels like, oh, I can't wait to see you again, and then by the end it was like they were desperate. They could only go a few minutes and they had to rush and touch their foreheads together, and there was, as soon as it starts moving that way, I'm thinking, oh, this isn't gonna end. This can't end very well. This is getting weird, and they're getting strange. How are we going to resolve that? Plus, and then she dug herself a hole with that crazy story about the long lost brother and everything. So.
The poor father.
I know. And then I thought, it's the 90s. I mean, they could not have gotten away with all of this in the age of the internet. If you could just Google, who is this kid? I mean, you could put a picture and figure out who he was now. He'd be in social media. He's some local journalist, and you could check the story about the dad. You could check everything, and the whole thing would get blown really fast.
Yeah, and Orlanda could also have looked on his social media to work out all of the, like Orlanda gets put in the middle of this family situation that the boy was having, and she's able to just take the phone off the hook. She doesn't have like a mobile that's constantly buzzing with his like Facebook messages or like his Discords or whatever. But yeah, like if in a modern day, Orlando would be able to like work out, okay, who is my girlfriend, who is my mom, who is my sister. Put that picture back together.
So quickly looking at the comments, we've got one from Memo. I thought something similar like you. I wondered what a more non-binary, gender-bending version might be like now, 30 years after Orlanda. Yeah, I mean, I could feel the vibe was not what I was expecting. Like Roz said, initially I thought it was going to stick with that humor. And then when we had, so obviously you have this encounter in the bar, in the toilets on the train, and then you see the man that sort of like gets off at the platform, and you see the family, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, this has got a really ambiguous undercurrent, doesn't it? And the more you think about Lucian, the more you realize, are we sure, where is he? Where is this poor guy? His consciousness and everything. And did he really have so little will and all of that? And as the story was progressing, I was just more and more unsettled about this, entire person disappearing.
Yeah.
Well, and they just kind of wrote him off and said, well, he wasn't going anywhere anyway. And I thought, well, wait, he was so young. Yeah. No, we don't know where he was going. He had a job, he had a girlfriend, he had an apartment. He was somebody.
He had a lot of money as well.
Yeah, there was mysteries there. Like, where did the money come from, and why did he have the gun?
I was really irked me. It irked me that he's got this money, and the judgment that was made by Orlanda is, well, he doesn't even know how to use it. Why is he constantly saving up? And why does someone like him actually even have that much money? And, it was so classist and so, all of the judgments about this poor guy's life.
Maybe he was trying to make his own kind of escape, and then they stole his body. They were body snatchers.
Yeah. And with the situation with his mother, you can see how he might have worked for years to try to get to a point where he could have his financial independence and stability and his own life away from that. But
and that's certainly as the book goes on, and it gets darker and darker because of the way, like, all these other people, not just Lucian, are like collateral damage, aren't they? So Aileen, Orlanda get to sort of explore their inner selves and their duality, and like that. And meanwhile, there's like Eline's, is it Bernard? Her who's perfectly decent, nice man who's gets like,
is it Albert?
Albert.
Yeah. So, and
I thought for a while, are they going to blow that up too? Because she was lying and sneaking around, and
but they don't. But you end up feeling quite devastated for Albert that he's now forevermore married to a murderess who, like, a part of her has been unfaithful to him, and like that he'll never know that whole situation existed.
Yeah, I felt sorry for that other man too that started to really like Orlanda. Forgot what his name was, but he kept going over to his apartment, and he had this whole, I'm not serious about anybody. I don't fall in love. And then he starts to get more and more fond of him, and then he never saw him again. But did he see it in the news that this young guy that he'd been seeing is suddenly dead and has a whole different name than what he was told?
Yeah.
So, and then there's Lucian's family, girlfriend and sister and mother, and and it's like,
I know he did tell him that his actual name, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, the body's name.
Lucian. So for me, I a lot of the book is just asking you questions, isn't it? But not necessarily providing you with answers. So when you're saying, Angelia, about how as time progresses, they can't be apart, like more and more they have to connect again. So the question is this about the danger of us splitting into this duality instead of bringing it into a harmonious togetherness? Or what was the point of, like, first they're eager and they're happy to be apart, or rather one of them is, and then they can't do without the other? What is behind that, do you think?
Well, this is the psychoanalytical bit that Amelia found so tiresome, I think.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's the idea of splitting parts of us off into separate sides is fundamentally unsustainable, or maybe parts of us do need to be repressed. Maybe she did need to keep stifling Lucian. I don't know. I'm so confused.
Well, she didn't know Orlanda was there in her. She just lived her life, and it was okay, and she didn't know anything was missing. And then now she knows. Now she knows it's there. She has to coexist within herself. She's got to deal with it. We don't really know what this is going to bring to her. Combined back together.
I think it's interesting. She didn't know that Orlanda was there, but there's a bit quite early on where it says, had this woman been asked to describe herself, she would have been quite at a loss. She felt as if she had no distinguishing characteristics. After all, everybody experiences vague bouts of sadness, and I guess the implication is that these vague bouts of sadness relate to her suppression of Orlanda and her unawareness of the suppression of Orlanda. And you wonder whether if she had been aware of that side of her character and had less need to kind of to suppress it, to push it down and push it out of herself, whether she would have been a more contented person and a more balanced person from the start and wouldn't have spiraled.
Well, and
my other question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ross.
That was me.
Who was it? Katja.
Yeah, my other question is, the stifling side seems to be attributed by both consciousnesses to her mother, and like that she's always saying what can and cannot be done and how it's done and all of that. And do we think that that also comes down to gender, that there's more right up to, like, especially in that impressionable age of 12, this is what girls can and can't do, that is proper, like, do you think that plays into it? And there would have been a bit more leeway if Aline had been born Orlanda.
I feel like Freud is always
This
blaming
is probably why I struggled with the book, because I just had so many questions.
Yeah, I feel like psychoanalysts are always trying to blame mothers, really, so that kind of fits with that.
Well, and it's portrayed in this story that the mother is sort of overbearing and has sort of curtailed her, but the father is just wonderful. He's generous, and it's like, well, but he's playing part of the role in this social construct. And I was thinking about the material about how young Aline had certain professional and academic interests that she was steered away from, and then that starts to come out during this time of the interest in mathematics and everything, and which is the gender stereotype, or at least I don't think, maybe not so much now, but at least still in the 90s was like, well, that guys are going to be better at math and the girls are going to be better at language and da. So I wonder what's going to happen with that. Is she going to pursue any of that, or because up to this point, Aline is such a repressed person without knowing it, that she feels like she's creating, like she's having this big naughty thing when she buys the science fiction book in the bookstore and reads that instead of Orlando. And so is she going to bust out and just say, I'm going back to school to study, I don't know what it was, physics or algebra, whatever it was, something I don't understand. But
I feel like even if she is now aware that that's something that's within herself, I still feel that she would struggle, because she's at the point in her life of being 35, being like in a settled profession and having reached a certain standing. Like, it would be such a huge disruption to then like go back to college and study something completely different, that like, even though you kind of want her to be able to do what she wants to do, it's hard to see, even with her new revelations about herself, it's hard to see her being able to do that. And it's just one of those things that you kind of end up, as you age, getting more and more pinned down by society.
So just very quickly going to the comments, Memo said, oh, poor Lucian, maybe you didn't want to die. It feels like being called a tomboy by her mother already scattered her persona many years ago. And I'm just thinking, with all of the questions that we have, obviously we're talking about the psychoanalyst side of her coming into the way that she writes. But in the end, this kind of feels like when we say she's got these fresh ideas, or she's not scared of being experimental in style, it's almost like saying, actually, we can expect this not to be traditional storytelling. And then thinking about how we're just constantly asking questions, it seems to be about the philosophical side. She's like doing this philosophical, I don't know, speculation, making us, ask 101 questions, sort of thing. So I agree that the discussion, the discussion
it's a novel of ideas. It's definitely a novel of ideas, and we get caught up in the characters and the plot, but it feels like she writes it because she wants to explore the ideas. And that was true of I Who Have Never Known Men as well, that I got attached to the story and the characters, but it was very much about the ideas, I think, for the author, maybe.
Well, and we don't get any preliminary time with Aline. I mean, the book starts right when the split happens, just moments before. So we don't really get a full sense of how different she is with Orlanda, out of her head, near her, back in her. We don't really, we get little bits of it, like that she's speaking in an uncharacteristically frank manner at these dinner parties, but we don't really know how out of character she's acting, or what it's going to be like going forward. We know Albert's he's sort of confused about, she's acting kind of weird, but he leaves and goes on that trip for part of it and comes back. So he misses kind of the weirdest part. And then she makes up the phony story about the brother and everything to kind of, so that he won't think she's having an affair with this young guy. Yeah. But if they hadn't remerged, I don't know how she would have integrated him in very well when he's actually this other person that people are going to recognize. That never happened either. They're walking around and nobody ever comes up and thinks he's Lucian. And there's awkward things that could have happened that weren't in the story.
They drive past his girlfriend at one stage.
Oh yeah.
He says, "Oh, I've got to hide," but I guess like he doesn't know if he's being recognized as Lucian because he wouldn't recognize the people recognizing him. Oh. If that makes sense.
If they didn't come up and say,
but nobody said hi. Yeah. It sets up a lot of challenges, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of those books where you have to do a fair bit of suspension of disbelief, isn't it? It's like it's a if you start worrying about, well, how would that work? Well, obviously it wouldn't. So just let's worry about it.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. Like for me, it's harder to suspend disbelief in a book like this where the world is real and normal, except for this one really weird thing, than like I, who have never known men, where it's completely different. Everything is a totally different setup, and I'll go like, okay, that's how it is, and then I go on with the story.
Yeah. No, I can understand that as well. We've read recently, Ros and I, on the Calculation of Volume, which is another great book for making you think. That's also set in a completely real world, apart from one character is stuck in one day and can't progress. And I think there's something quite interesting about the author pushing you to have the thought process of, oh, what if this could one day suddenly happen, that I'm sitting in a cafe and then I split my personality in two? Or what would it be like to have a male version of myself present in the same space as me, rather than like if you're completely in a fantasy world, you don't see yourself there so much.
Right. And we probably all thought about, well, what would I do if I was running around in some guy's body? What what would I do? But yeah, I'm reading those too. I'm going to be reading number 3 starting next week. I've been reading those with Louise in Australia. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of working our way through those, but
you reminded me, I read the first one for the International Booker last year, and I haven't read the second. So yeah, I better get on that.
Well, the 4th one's coming out, I think, in April. So we're reading the 3rd one, and then if we're still happy, we'll go on to the 4th one.
I think it sounds like we would all recommend this to anybody watching who hasn't read on the Calculation of Volume. Yeah, little tangent there, but yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. But I was just thinking, in terms of Orlanda again, the audacity in terms of, obviously we already feel sorry for Lucian, but when we're talking about how they pass the girlfriend and he's ducking, the way that Orlanda treated Lucian's girlfriend was horrendous. I mean, he treated the whole family terrible, but you do feel for this girl. But on top of that, I thought to myself, do you know how he reacts with such revulsion at her affection? Because he's like, I'm not attracted to women, and this is so gross. And I was thinking to myself, well, the body and the original owner of that body was attracted to this woman in front of you. That's kind of like the audacity to treat her that way, So yeah, it's fascinating when you think about the different things that they do, and you're like,
And I was thinking about the implications of that in terms of like how much of the brain Orlanda is in control of, because so much of attraction is based on sort of hormonal responses and things that aren't necessarily just within your conscious brain. But Orlanda seems to have brought all of that from Aline, like somehow taken over completely how the whole system works for Lucy.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Yep.
Yeah. One of the things that I've already said I really liked about the book, but I'm going to come back to is the role of the narrator and the sort of authorial voice. Is it the author, or is it, as you say, is it another character? And because I was thinking about where you said, like we get dropped right in it, and the way she writes it as if she was observing these two people and saw the moment it happened and then follows them. And because she writes about Aline in particular as if she didn't already know her. Like normally an author writes a character and gives that character a backstory, in their heads, even if they don't go into detail, whereas she kind of does the opposite. And there's a point when she's saying how she thought that Aline was really kind of dull and predictable, but that actually she realizes she must be have always been more complex, because, and she says, and I love this, she said, would anybody with a rudimentary mind study Proust so closely, she says. And then the bit I like, she says, to perceive and communicate the richness of a work of literature, you need to be able to respond to all its complexity from within yourself. And so she's realizing, as the narrator who's created this character, that Aline was a more, if she could, it's like kind of, if she could appreciate something like Proust, she there was more to her than met the eye, I suppose.
Yeah, that she always had these hidden depths.
Yeah. But it's quite funny, the author sort of speaking as the narrator and saying that, It's bit meta, as they say.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to Discord. I think we've covered a lot of what was actually discussed, and then there was a comment from Ian, which I found interesting, because I just attributed Orlanda entirely to Orlando, but I think there's different ideas from Virginia Woolf's other writings that are explored in the book, including A Room of One's Own does more explicitly, even more so than Orlando, suggests that the mind contains both masculine and feminine elements. So, I think Harpman actually dug deep into Woolf's repertoire as well, rather than just into Orlando. So that was interesting from Ian.
That's another unread book I have on my shelf. So I've got a whole rabbit hole to go down to follow up behind this.
I feel like I need to kind of stage some sort of intervention for you, Angelia, to make you, allow you to make time in your life for more Virginia Woolf.
I know, because I've only read Mrs. Dalloway and To the Lighthouse, but I have 2 or 3 others on the shelf, and the inclination, I just, time.
Did we want to talk a little bit about the actual ending and the events of the ending as we're coming up towards the end of the hour?
Yeah, we can consider, does it restore balance, or did it deepen the tragedy? I'll let you guys decide.
The first thing I wanted to say about it was, and this is something, Angelia, you said, it's a very literary book altogether with lots of literary references. And so, when the gun appears relatively early on, I'm sure we were all thinking, okay, a gun has appeared, it's Chekhov, isn't it? It's like, this is going to end up being used. So all the way through, I was thinking, how's the gun going to get used?
Right. But at the same time, the way that it comes in at the end is so, in a way, it's so surprising that it reminded me of the quote from Raymond Chandler, that advice to writers, like, if in doubt, have a man come in through the door with a gun and shoot somebody. I don't know whether he says and shoot somebody, but this idea of like, oh, if you don't know where to go with your story, just like throw a gun in the mix. And at the end, it's kind of like, oh, I don't know how to resolve this situation. Let's just shoot somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I figured the gun wasn't, Chekhov's gun. I didn't think it was shown for no reason. And then we were reminded at least one other time in the middle that it was there. Yeah. And that was, I know I put in the comment in the Discord at the time that it felt very, very, well, it never felt like an American story, but it definitely didn't feel like one when they saw a gun and they thought, who would have a gun? The only reason you'd have a gun is if you're a gangster or you're getting ready to commit suicide. Like the people wouldn't just have a gun. I'm thinking, you haven't been to Texas, but okay. Anyway, yeah. So the gun, I felt nervous about the gun, but what I thought was maybe some extra plot about Lucian was going to come into the story, like some gangsters or somebody was going to show up at the house and he was going to have to do some fast thinking about who is this and what do they want, because we're talking about money and guns, and he just seems to be this very young beginning journalist, which also, I mean, were things different in that time and place? Like who could be 20 and they're already like interviewing celebrities for a publication, and he hasn't gone to college or anything?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think it is true, and maybe slightly not then, but like journalism was something that people could go into as almost like as an apprentice.
Okay. Because I wondered about that, because
so now people do degrees before they go into journalism. Traditionally,
right. That would not happen. Well, maybe way in the past.
Yeah.
Like
not even like in the 1970s and 80s, people.
Yes. You could just go into it. Okay. So I just had this, I thought, well, I guess that's how it is. So I'm just going to roll with that. Yeah. And early on, I was upset for him. So like they just went and lost him his job because I didn't know he wasn't going to come back around. And so there was a lot about him that I was unsatisfied. I thought, oh, I wish we would have got more about this person. But I guess in regards to the ending, I didn't know that was going to happen until it happened. I knew something probably about the gun. But then as the story went on, it was so unorthodox. I thought, well, she doesn't seem to be too encumbered by storytelling rules. So she could very well just bring something up and not do anything with it. Who knows? And so, but then it did come back around. And I guess right up until that moment, I guess I was like Orlanda, where he's thinking, you are not going to do that. Come on, you're not going to do that. And she does. Yeah. I thought, oh, she did. And then I don't know, just the callous disregard of Lucian, his life and his body all through this story was distressing.
Yeah, and I also had this feeling like, oh, what's going to happen to Lucian when he comes back into his body? Like, he's going to have to repair his relationship. He's going to find out that his mum's died. He's going to need to find a new job. And yeah, there's also this question of like, well, was he a gangster? He does have a lot of money and he does have a gun. Like, what was going on in his life? Like, he must have had some kind of secrets and extra layers, and yet he's suppressed more than Orlanda was ever suppressed.
I also did wonder if he was ripping off his mother, because he kept supplying her with the alcohol. And I don't know if she had any independent wealth, but I thought maybe because there was a question of, why did he keep doing that? Was it because she pressured him and he was immature and he didn't know how to say no? Or did he want her to have poor judgment and be impaired, and she was giving him money or had given him access to her money? So I was making up extra stories that weren't in the story.
Yeah. I think one thing that would have made the book better for me would be a little bit more about Lucian and a little bit more to like pad out that side. But it obviously wasn't what Harpman was interested in doing.
I feel like she's just an author that is not her concern to make us more comfortable with what she did with the characters. Like, that's our problem. You know, yes, if we found out he was doing a bunch of heinous things, maybe we would feel better about the ending, but she wasn't going to give us that out. Like, it could be or it couldn't be. And we're just, we're stuck with it.
Yeah, I think a lot of authors feel that obligation to give you extra about particular characters, especially the ones that they think they've got you invested in. And I think Roz said this earlier, that she's really exploring the idea. Yes, there are the characters that you can get hooked into and, interested by, but the real point of it seems to be about the idea more than the characters. So yeah. We have got another meta comment, so about the story being so meta. At one point, Aline says she had dinner with Jacqueline. I assumed she is the writer.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that's my memo. Went over my head, so that is interesting.
Yeah. Jacqueline, that was one of the little group of like literary friends that they get together with, I think. But so she's in the story, and I did think, well, that's interesting. You put someone in the story with your name. Is that what's that?
Yeah.
Could be Arlene's psychoanalyst.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just looking at right at the end of the story. You have the little chapter that's called moral, when they talk about, you know, like Hartman again becomes very, very present, and she's like, oh, you know, who could you put on trial for Lucian's death, because, you know, like the person that committed it was in a different state when they would their consciousness was in a different state, and then she sort of says, it's a novel, a made-up story which only takes place in my head. I have no blood on my hands, just a little ink, and I have never claimed to write stories that are morally correct. And she's kind of almost like washing her hands of it, like, you know, like you worry about this if you want to, but I don't take any responsibility for Lucian's death, even though I wrote the story in which he died.
Yeah,
and that is very much when you feel like the narrator was the author. So, yeah.
Yes.
So it did say at the end of my copy that Lucian's murderer was never found. It has to be said the young man did not have any shady connections.
Oh,
so
I missed that.
So it's on the on the Kindle version at 99% right at the end. He was neither a drug addict nor a dealer. So I think that obviously that by that point there had been all that speculation. So nor a criminal of any kind, and he paid his taxes when they were due.
Yeah.
But the police did not put themselves out. So yeah, poor Lucian.
A little comment on Belgian policing, I suppose.
Well, it makes you think of all the times when something like that happens, when there's a really bizarre, there's a murder or a disappearance, and there's a little bit of effort, and then it's never answered.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, in fact, that part is just before moral. So yeah, but it was a fascinating story, and I think for me, the, you know, like you said, the Discord chat was the most the thing that really pulled me actually through it, because there were points I was going, oh.
Yeah.
And then I'd look at the Discord and go, okay, I feel motivated again.
Yeah. The moral support in the Discord was helpful.
Yeah, for me, Angelia, you have to remind yourself that the mothers are always the cause of all your problems, and so they were for Aline and Lucian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Okay, so yeah, unless we have any more comments in the chat, I think we're close to wrapping up perfectly at 58 minutes. That's actually really good for us, isn't it, Roz? I think we usually end up going at a little over an hour.
No, so that's good. And yes, really want to thank everyone who was in the Discord group, because that conversation brought so much to my sort of enjoyment of the book, and I'm sure we'll feel the same. But including Angelia and Tilly, thank you for coming, but thank you for being, you know, we asked you to because you brought so much to the conversation, but so did everyone else, and thank you all.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone who's joined live with thoughts and comments as well. I think it's been nice to see
everybody today, and everyone who was in the original discussion, and thanks for inviting me. It was lots of fun.
Thanks for hosting us.
Thank you. So very quickly, Roz, do you want to say what the next book is? Because we'll be talking about it first week of June on your channel. It's our book for May, which is the Turkish one.
It's a Turkish one, and it's oh, I've got to get the name right. It's Layla's House. Hang on,
yep, Layla's House. Yep.
But I'm gonna mess up pronouncing the author's name, Zufanelli. So he's a Turkish writer, and it's a we're kind of joining up with Berna's Turkish book club to share this book in, and he's a really interesting kind of quite political writer who often writes about women and from a kind of women's sort of, or about the lives of women, I suppose, not necessarily from a women's perspective, but about the lives of women. And it's I'm looking forward to this. It's the main character is an older woman who's like a kind of almost like a survivor of the sort of the end of the Ottoman period, and then struggling with life in sort of modern, more modern day Turkey. So sounds good.
Yep. Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Bye.